Stopping advanced threats requires knowing exactly what you're up against. ExtraHop Reveal X is the only solution that shows you not just where intruders are going, but where they've been. 90-day look-back and complete network visibility across the data center, cloud, and device edge help security teams respond 84% faster with ExtraHop Reveal X network detection and response. Explore the interactive demo at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. Cyber risk and compliance automation is finally here. Legacy GRC systems cannot support the powerful, real-time automation and oversight that organizations require to take risks that matter to succeed. CyberSync continuous control automation ingests data from the IT GRC stack to update controls against regulatory requirements and risks in real time, delivering insights and visibility. See how members of the Fortune 500 are saving millions annually by visiting securityweekly.com/CyberSync. Welcome back, everyone, to Business Security Weekly. We're more than happy to announce that we will be at InfoSec World 2021 in person on October 25th through the 27th. This year, our annual partnership with InfoSec World is extra special. We're both part of the Cyber Risk Alliance. What does that mean for Security Weekly listeners and InfoSec World attendees? You get to hear from many of us at Security Weekly and save 20% off your World Pass by visiting securityweekly.com/ISW 2021 and register with our discount code. Also, if you want to stay in the loop, all things Security Weekly, make sure you visit securityweekly.com/subscribe, where you can subscribe via your favorite podcast catcher to all of the shows on our network, our YouTube channel, sign up for our mailing list, and join our Discord server. Also, make sure you're following us on the latest live stream platform. That's right, that's Twitch. Well, it's new to us. Anyway. Now on to the leadership articles for this week. Adrian, I want to start with one of yours because this was something I did at a meeting that you were on earlier, actually, where someone asked a question and I was like, hey, I have the utmost confidence that you can make that decision on your own and answer that question yourself. I think what I failed to add was if you make the wrong decision, it's okay. You'll learn from it, right? Like you got to trust that people are going on your team, reach a point where they can make decisions on their own, answer their own questions.
So I actually have two that go together. So number 4 and number 2 on my list go together. The other one's Self-Direction 2.0, how to successfully scale a flat organization. And I included that one because there's a neat framework in there that basically gives employees guidelines on making decisions themselves without having to ask permission for things.
Yeah, I mean,
for everything, right? Like some things they're still going to have to ask.
Yeah, like, I want $1 million budget for this. Like, they're probably going to require some approval.
You set the parameters, right? And I've always had that philosophy: is you hire really good people for a reason. So let them make decisions, right? You don't always have to be that stamp of approval on everything,
right?
You need to create an empowering business unit. You have to, right? I mean, as a leader in an organization, whether you're a CIO, you're a CISO, whatever the case may be, if you want to hold those reins and do everything, why do you even have a team then, right?
I don't want to hold those reins.
Right? So it's funny. Over time, I've had conversations with folks who really want to make that transition from being hands to keyboard to leadership. And I let them know, listen, you're going to have to get more comfortable pulling those hands away from the keyboard, right? And becoming strategic and directing folks and allowing them to go off and innovate, right? And do things, whether it's successful or sometimes like you said, you can fail, right?
Yeah, it's like you're on my team. I know you have good common sense.
That's it.
And so, as long as your decisions have good common sense, I can't really, I don't have ground to stand on to really... judge that.
And as the leader,
and also I think too, if you made a stupid mistake, okay, we'll all learn from it.
That's how people learn. That's how you learn as an organization, right? And as a leader, it's up to you to create an environment where folks can fail successfully, right?
Yes,
and not cripple an organization. So as the leader, you have to create that environment for them to be able to go out there, test things, innovate, fail sometimes, and learn from that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I like that one, Adrian.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and that framework is specifically, they call it 3x2. And the 3 is clients, as long as you feel confident that your decision will benefit clients, colleagues, and numbers. I assume numbers are like KPIs, something like that. And then the 2 is that it will do so both today and tomorrow, so that it's, the decision isn't short-sighted, in other words. So it's kind of like a cheat sheet of, here's how to make a solid decision. You know?
Nope. No, that's great.
And I think also making a decision is better than not making one.
No decision is still a decision.
Yeah. Well,
right. I mean, we'll just wait till Paul gets back from vacation to make that decision.
There's putting off a decision.
By then, now you're in crunch.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing. Indecision is still a decision, right? Your
indecision's like what gets squirrels, right?
That's it, right? At the end of the day, that's what ends up happening, right?
Either go or don't go.
That's it.
But if you're doing something
Stop
in between,
going back and forth.
that car is
That's
probably
it.
going to flatten you.
You're roadkill.
You're roadkill.
So funny. My dad always used to say.
Analogy.
My dad always used to say, "Don't play the middle of the road because you'll get hit by both sides."
Yeah. And like deciding not to go is a decision.
That's a decision.
Right?
Indecision is an actual
decision. You see that with
decision.
a lot of the leadership advice from, the Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, that kind of thing. And one of the things you glean from all of that is exactly what we're saying. Like, say no more often than not to a lot of things, right? And that's okay. That's okay.
It is. Yeah.
But
Well,
also in security too,
saying,
like saying no to like new initiatives, that's also a thing you have to balance, right?
Sure, of course.
And to what you're saying, Jason, enabling people to make that decision, sure, it's going to be a mistake. It's better than indecision, and making those mistakes is sometimes necessary to learn.
Yes.
It is. It's 100%
distinguish
necessary.
the right from the wrong decision.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's how you allow your staff to grow. They're growing into that leadership capability by doing these things and empowering them to make those type of decisions.
And it's just so common to find organizations where the culture is people are just petrified of making mistakes because they, get embarrassed in front of the whole company.
Sure.
Like that's one of the very, talking about Steve Jobs, that's something he used to do that, like a lot of people agree with his management approach, except for those times when he just like pulls somebody's pants down in front of the whole company, basically.
Yep. Yeah. That's not cool.
Nope.
I want to transition to, we're tired of reading cliche self-help articles because I feel like we've fallen victim to this here on this show. And I was just really behind their statement that, folks that write these kind of leadership, self-help articles, they lure us in with the promise of being healthy, wealthy, or incredibly successful. Each article promises to change your life, air quotes, change your life, so you can, air quotes, become a better person. But more often than not, you're left with a bitter taste in your mouth because the writer just clickbaited you and you got a few more views and dollars in their bank account.
It's so funny. I was just having a similar conversation with a colleague this week about leadership books that come out, right? And management books that come out. And you have the folks who like write book after book after book after book. And one of the comments that I got from them was, it's starting to become kind of cultish.
Yeah.
And I said, if you take a look at all of those self-help leadership management authors, eventually they all become that, right? They all start to get that cultish vibe, right? Like the Maxwells of the world, the Simon Sinek's of the world. It starts to become cultish. And my whole thing was, you got to read those, but you also have to bring your own balance to what you're reading.
Yes.
You don't read it as gospel. You don't read it as this is exactly how I'm going to achieve success or become rich. You take it and you add it to your you add it to your portfolio.
Yeah. And I think that, I think you hit on something that's interesting, Jason. I think that's why when you try to compel others in your organization to read some of these works, that they just won't. Like they don't want to because there's hesitation.
It feels
there
cultish,
because
right?
it feels cultish. It feels cliche.
Right.
It feels like, oh my god, like people are making me read a book. But we've got a list of books that are really good. Really good.
Absolutely.
The ones we talk about in the show are the ones like we're really good.
But that's it. I mean, it's like anything else. Use it as a framework. Use it as a framework for success. Don't use it as gospel.
Adrian, sorry, you're trying to pipe in.
The thing that irritates me about these articles and books is typically, like the articles could be summed up in 3 sentences.
Yep.
Like everything that's useful in the article.
Yeah.
Like most of the article is just to keep you there for 3 or 4 minutes. And then and it makes me angry. And the same thing with the books. Like I'm a big fan of those. What's it called? There's a couple services that basically summarize these. Blinkist is the one that I use.
Yeah. One of them advertises on Darknet Diaries. Is it Blinkist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. And it's one of these where it's like, look, this self-help book, is there's literally like a page or maybe 2 pages or maybe a paragraph that is really the crux of
right.
what's useful about it. And it's not that the rest of it isn't useful. It takes that concept and gives you a bunch of examples.
It's like when you're in the meeting and you're like, that could have been an email, and then you read the book and you're like, that could have been a Blinkist.
Right.
Exactly.
I'll tell you the summation of this article was 1 sentence, and I took it down in my notes. 1 sentence. It says, "But now I think of self-help like ice cream. If you have too much, you'll probably get sick."
Yep.
That was it. That's the summation of the article right there.
So, I mean, that's a good transition to my story number 7. You might be a secret productive procrastinator.
That was the paywall one.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I think I'll show you my trick to get around that. But I do this. So this is another, I mean, it kind of is on the fringes of the self-help things we're talking about, but I thought it had some valuable advice. I do this more often than I like, and I think some of us probably do this too. There are obvious forms of productive procrastination, such as organizing your office before you start a project. You somehow convince yourself that the mess will distract you from your work, and you spend all this time, cleaning your office to
not doing the work.
But I mean, to play devil's advocate to that, sometimes to do certain types of work, you have to be in a certain mood or a certain mindset. And sometimes cleaning your office has helped me kind of get in that mindset, right?
No, rituals are important. Routines and rituals, studied like me, the way my brain works is it's going to be a distraction for me.
Yeah.
If that mess isn't cleaned up, I've got to get that done to be able to get into that focus mode.
Yeah. See, for me, I am notorious. I'm a crammer. Like I was the kid who crammed for tests. I was the kid who would study nonstop the night before, right? Instead of doing it over time. I'm still that same way, and I'm most productive and most successful because I've tried it both ways. I get better work done under pressure.
Yeah.
Quality's better. The quality's better under pressure. But it's just how I operate.
I think a better example, too, is they say, it's almost like another example they give. It's spending 1 hour researching the fonts that you want to use. And they talk about revamping the resume, but I liken that to slides because I've generated more slides in my career than I ever would want to count, right? And sometimes you fall into that trap where you're finding the perfect font and the perfect template,
the rabbit hole,
with the perfect colors, or I'm looking for the perfect image for that slide, and I kind of get hung up on that rather than actually getting the work done. So that resonated, I think, more with me than cleaning, because as you guys have seen, my office is usually a mess, right? And I just learned to thrive in that environment. So they do have a good suggestion. That time blocking, right? So when I'll put this in the context of slides. Before you go create the slides for your next webcast, set aside 15 minutes to find the right font, the right images, and the right template, and then move into this. You still have that there. Sometimes also I find in searching for the right font, like I'm filling my mind with another task to purposely distract myself because I just need a break from trying to think about the content. So go find the font, and then when I find the perfect font, then I'm really motivated and I crank up more content. So I think we added the right amount of context to that article to make it useful.
Yeah. I mean, I've come up with all my own techniques to do stuff. Like I found if I have to create, if it's a big creative endeavor, I have to break it down into chunks. Because of that font issue, I will specifically use, I'll build the outline in something that has no text controls. It's just plain text. Or I'll even, I've been known, like if I'm going to do a talk and it's a talk with like 20 plus slides, I'll go and I'll literally draw a grid and like draw out what's going to be on each slide so that on a single piece of paper, I can see the flow of the whole talk.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's important.
Nice.
Automation and how it helps security. One of the things that I really wanted to harp on, and you can read the article and all that stuff, but I think at the end of the day, you need to make sure that there's people on your bus that make a Jim Collins reference. I use that reference a lot.
Self-help leadership book.
Yeah, exactly. But you need people on the team, and maybe not everyone, but I think a good hefty percentage of those that can understand the possibilities that software and automation can bring, so that they can help guide the change to the organization and the processes. Right? And I think if you're not that person, you need people who can influence people to become those people on the team, right?
100%.
Embracing, and I think it actually segues into like who moved my cheese to a certain extent, because that is change. Implementing new software and workflow automation is change, and that's one aspect of it. But understanding like what's possible with technology today, or changing the process. So I guess there's two. There's process change, which largely isn't technical, right? But there's understanding that there's software that could help automate this, and understanding what's possible is important. And I would defer to maybe people with more experience on the team if that's the right fit or not. But I want people on the team that are just constantly going, hey, why can't we use this software for this? Why can't we automate using this for Adrian? I think that's one of the things that Adrian brings to the team, right? He's like, oh yeah, we used a software thing to automate that. I'm like, wait, tell me about that. Right? Yeah. Maybe it's a fit, maybe it's not. But I want the ideas to come out there of like, what if we were to, it may not be the right solution, but it forces the discussion.
For every team, there needs to be a level of continuous improvement constantly happening, right? And I grew up in a lean IT world, right? So lean business process mapping, continuous improvement mentality. Because I learned early on in my career that crappy process equals crappy technology implementation. 100%.
Yes,
right?
They go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand.
Because you can have a really crappy process, and you can have all the whiz-bang technology you want,
the experience is going to suck.
Process.
The experience is going to suck no matter what, right? So it's always been an imperative of mine to make sure that the process is solid. And that's a continuous improvement methodology. You always have to be going back and looking at the process, figuring out where there's non-value add in that process, and how do you eliminate that non-value add. Many times it's technology that fixes the non-value add.
That helps you, because I go back and I look at our processes sometimes, and I'm like, wow, our processes, like the team has just done collectively a great job of putting together the right processes. I'm like, what we're lacking here is just technology to help us implement it the way we want to.
And that's where it aligns, right?
But if you walked in and said, wow, that's a really crappy process, not going to work.
No, you're in trouble from the start, right? So that's the whole thing. It's always a journey. We talk about the journey all the time, right? But it is, because you have to evaluate your process continuously. And take a look at it and say, what's available for technology and automation today? Because it may not have been available 5 years ago, the last time you looked at the process, right?
Adrian?
Well, a lot of it can be pretty basic stuff, like something that's always struck me is just general office skills. Like there's so much cool stuff that you can do with Excel, and knowing how to do some basic statistical analysis and stuff like that, how to pull things into Excel to help you make decisions, even if it's not a permanent spreadsheet. Oftentimes I found it a useful skill to just pull all the data in there, to help make a decision about something. But even if you go back as far as I think the goal was written in the 80s or something like that.
Yeah, it was like
hugely useful
or something like that.
Hugely useful for getting you in that mindset of process improvement and identifying issues with processes. Because it's again, this is a cultural thing where it's so easy to just get used to inefficiency because that's the way it's always been done.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of that is communication too, and that communication can be automated. We talk about automation and security. A lot of it's not. It is about automating so you can discover things, and that's one part of it. But then notifying the right people, to your kind of DevOps and lean manufacturing reference, Adrian, right? Notifying the right people when those things happen is an important part of the process. And if you got that nailed, technology can help you automate. The notifications is actually some of the easier things when we talk about security and other business processes. Like, send this person a Slack message or an email when this happens so they know.
Oh, absolutely. And we talk about shifting left in security. It's the same mentality. Get that user base into whatever automation you're creating and building. Get them into it up front. Because guess who's going to be the user acceptance testing team? Them. Right? They're going to be doing the UAT for all your design and implementation and testing and dev, right? So you want to get them. You want to shift that left as well, right? Get them involved
in the process.
Building the requirements, right? Have them involved in the requirements building aspect.
Absolutely.
Right?
We do that, actually.
It's a personality type, too. If you hire people that hate doing stuff manually, like it's going to come naturally to them. They're going to say, is there some way that we can
automate
that? That's right. And then they become evangelists. They become evangelists.
I see analyst A emailing IP addresses to analyst B.
It
drives me nuts.
Ron Gula had, and I didn't listen to the podcast, admittedly. I just plucked out from the article, Innovation and Emerging Trends in Cybersecurity. And Ron's always stressed this, right, that you're looking for solutions that can fundamentally change the game rather than just reacting to the latest attack trend. I thought that was very relevant to the current cybersecurity landscape today. Ron actually specifically mentioned browser isolation and deception. What do you guys feel are solutions that could potentially fundamentally change the game for you?
So one of the things I wanted to pull out of this before we get into that was just his philosophy that he put out there, in his investment philosophy as well. And he literally said, no holds barred, I invest in solid engineering focused solutions that solve systemic problems. So he's not looking for the point solution. He's not looking for that one-time hit. He's looking for something that's going to solve a systemic issue. But that kind of ties back into our whole ecosystem conversation of the last segment, right? How are you going to systemically fix an issue if you identify it? It may be an ecosystem of products that integrate together. So I wanted to call that out because that was a very important piece to what he was trying to drive home in the in the podcast, was that I invest in engineering focused solutions that solve big problems.
I can't help, Adrian, but be reminded of folks like Cycognito and the other companies that we tested in attack surface monitoring in recent conversations that we've had on the shows and privately. Do you consider that a fundamental game changer?
No, I consider that to be
catching up to where we should be.
I think that's more of a generational change. That's more of an incremental change, because it's it's adding on to existing techniques. And I see it potentially even replacing the external vulnerability scan, and discovery scan use case, as they mature. The ones that I see foundationally different, I agree with them, deception, so that's one of the reasons I went over to Thinkst and worked there for a bit, is I don't think deception is the right way to think about it. I think the right way to think about it is you own your network, and there's things you can do with that network to make it harder or easier to do security. One of those are triggers that let you know when somebody's touching things that nobody should ever touch. We call it deception, but really what you're doing is you're thinking through your process, and if you look at what happens in a breach and things like that, you can then reverse engineer that to put sensors in place and tripwires in place, to let you know when certain things happen that should always rise to the top of your list of alerts and things that should get your hackles up.
Right.
The other one is breach and attack simulation, which I haven't looked closely at these products in a while. We're going to as part of Security Weekly Labs, and a little bit worried about the direction it was going, but potentially, its potential as the way to make sure that all our controls are working. The one part of the industry that makes sure the rest of the industry is doing what it's supposed to be doing, at least with respect to prevention and detection. I think it's crucially important. It's what every pen tester finds, what every consultant finds when they go in is and also doing, breach analysis and postmortems. People typically have all the technology they need, but they've not configured it right. They've not tested it, or the people and the processes aren't prepared or trained.
Yeah. Attack simulation is definitely one that's on my radar as well. It rose to the top a little bit higher once I found that Microsoft actually built their own product for their M365 entire instance, where you can run attack simulation within M365.
Oh, interesting.
But I think it ties into my story number 4, which is focused on application security. And I think the breach and attack simulation is that methodology applied to your IT and infrastructure security. And this article talks about how CISOs are so 97% of organizations surveyed do not have a real-time visibility into runtime environments and containerized production environments, and 2/3 said that DevOps and Agile development have made it more difficult to detect and manage software vulnerabilities, which is interesting. One of the suggestions was, they say, while not security related, supporting automated testing coverage will help the organization deploy changes safer and also make patching changes easier to deploy. I'd argue that is fundamentally what we want to accomplish. Security. I think it is absolutely security related.
Yeah.
And actually will help you push the needle in your security program more than a lot of other things. Adrian, back to your point on breach and attack simulation, I think it's that applied to your IT environments.
Yeah, and I think the key word in this article is confidence. Is CISOs aren't confident.
Yep.
And the actual word security means the literal Latin translation is without worry. And I think that's why breach and attack simulation, to me is so important. Is it runs you through the process, of what an attack against your stuff might look like, and it helps to reveal those deficiencies and those gaps or lack of visibility that you need to fix.
Right.
It also helps you understand, where you can just smooth out that process, where you can save time and effort. And I think culturally, one of the things we're going to have to get used to get better at this stuff, and again, one of the reasons I like breach and attack simulation is, I think we should be doing incident response training probably weekly. We should treat it more like a sport. Like if we want to get good at protecting stuff and responding to threats, we should treat it as a sport. We're not going to be any good if we don't practice at it.
We've said that a million times. Train the way you fight, right? You have to train the way you fight.
And it's interesting. Simpiris had a great article that I think ties into that. 3 steps to harden your Active Directory in light of recent events. Now, the first one has to do with email phishing. I think if you table that, what we look at as actual exposures in our environment, we tend to label as like, oh, there's some missing patches, or maybe there's some configuration that we can detect that's not quite right, or we've got these compensating controls. Number 2 and 3 on their list really focus on the configuration aspect. But more so than just configuration, it's the process behind that. For many organizations, new configuration of the local administrator password has to be different on every endpoint, and the local domain admins shouldn't have access to the local group. And number 3 was what they talked about as privileged access workstations. As you administer the environment, it's done on a different system that is treated differently from the system.
It's micro-segmentation for the identity. Is what they're boiling it down to.
But those are like the security approaches that I feel like if you've got 2 and 3 in place and you're running breach and attack simulation, it's going to highlight whether you're doing 2 or 3 or not is going to come to the forefront. And again, that's like configuration and process that helps you secure your environment, not, you need to be just patching all of your stuff, right? Like what's going to prevent the next ransomware attack against your organization.
And I mean, they listed 3, but there's a ton more than just 3.
2 and 3 you could go in Active Directory on forever. It's super hard.
And then, I mean, you start talking about the combination of on-prem AD and Azure Active Directory and all the things you can do in Azure AD, right? So this could be, we could probably do a whole segment on just this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, these aren't new best practices, right? Lapse is...
Exactly.
I'm looking at,
it was in my slides.
Lapse is version 6.2. It's been out for a decade, right?
Yeah, it was in my slide deck in 2015 on how to protect AD.
Yeah.
Because there's still so many things that people can do and just don't. And again, it's not necessarily like even applying a patch or changing a configuration. It requires coordination and teamwork and changing the way people, different processes that we talked about before, coupled with technology.
And again, this goes back to you own your network. It's up to you if you want to make it easy or hard for an attacker in your environment. If your environment looks exactly the way your attacker expects it to be, it's going to be easy for them.
Yep.
All their tools are going to work. They're not going to have to do any critical thinking. They're just going to sail right on through and get ransomware in all your systems and for some Bitcoin.
Be a great presentation for a pen tester, and the title would just be, "Oh crap," and all the slides would be related to like every time a pen tester is on a pen test and they come up against some control or process and they're like, oh crap, they're doing that. Like, oh crap, they're doing labs. Like, oh crap, they have privileged access workstations, right? And like you said, Adrian, there's a longer list here. Even my slides, not being an AD security expert, I sourced together on, from various resources, people included in that are experts in the field. And it was really based on that. I asked pen testers was one thing I did. What makes you go, oh crap, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for example, did you know, at least it used to be, more than half of ransomware used a built-in encryption API in Windows to encrypt your own files. They're using your own tools to encrypt the files.
Right. Yeah, we could make, a new compliance standard to be the OC standard, the all crap.
The old crap standard.
Be the one I would implement. Put it that way.
I would go that talk. That's a good talk.
Also, just running short on time or overtime, but demystifying RockYou2021. What was this like? How many gigabytes? A terabyte of password dumps or something?
8.4 billion records. I don't know how big
password dumps
space-wise that was.
I leaned the way.
It's not just passwords.
No, it's credentials, right?
No, it's not just credentials. Every word from Wikipedia is in that thing.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, wow.
And every word from all the books in the Gutenberg project are in that thing. It's a dictionary list. Like there's some passwords in there,
right?
But it's a cracking dictionary.
I think I looked at it from an attack surface monitoring perspective in that you should have a process that discovers your attack surface and discovers if you've got credentials that are in public data breaches and automates that and operationalizes it so that it feeds into your identity management program and that maybe within 24 hours, all effective users have their password changed, but also have their sessions and established in trusts and cache credentials reset as part of that as well. Yeah. It's not just about changing your password. You got to make sure all that stuff is reset. I mean, that speaks volumes.
I mean, how many organizations are actually doing a level of credential audit, right? I mean, we had a customer back in the day that, we did a credential audit for them. We cracked all their hashes and showed them, hey, you have a deficient process in your IT help desk. And you know what that deficient process is? Your help desk folks change people's passwords. When they're doing tech support, they change people's passwords to the same password across the entire organization. And guess what? Those users, they're not forcing the user to change the password on next login. So now you have hundreds and hundreds of versions of that same password
I've
across
used that
your
as a pen tester. Absolutely.
Yeah, right?
Once you find out what that password is.
It's just IT help desk best practice.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not happening.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the reason why Loftcrack was so popular.
How hard is it to give them a password generator?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Like we used to use Diceware. If you remember Diceware.
I don't.
So it was basically like I had it saved as like HTML, and it was a you'd roll a set of dice, and it was like a dictionary of different words.
All right.
And based on the outcome of the dice, it would select the password from those two groups of words. Huh. So it was basically a way to very, kind of low tech create a passphrase, a unique passphrase.
That is until the attackers reverse engineer Diceware and figure it out and build a dictionary for every combination. Which I guess if you had enough combinations, that gets into crypto.
But these days, I mean, just use a password database tool with like a, password generator built into it.
Right.
That's it. Plain and simple.
We're running really long on time. Was there anything else you guys wanted to cover? Certainly there's not enough time for my story number 3, which is how you drive value with security data. We may want to save that one until next week because we could talk probably 50 minutes on it. Just that story.
I thought my number 3 was pretty interesting because CISOs seem kind of split on whether they want the government to do more or less about ransomware. It's a
tough conversation.
Yeah,
on so many levels.
Yeah, I mean, some were saying, they shouldn't be treating it on a case-by-case basis. They should be treating it more as like, a single, issue that the government's going after and actually doing offensive stuff, and then, other ones are on the other side of it, and they're like, no, this is a individual company problem, business problem. But I mean, you learn anything but what the title promises there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching this edition of Business Security Weekly. See you next time.